Next, we focus on the escalating tensions in the West Bank. Well, the Israeli army claims 3 people have been shot dead at the border crossing between the West Bank and Jordan. The Israeli military claims the gunman approached the Allenby Bridge crossing from the Jordanian side in a truck and opened fire at Israeli security forces, who killed the assailants in a shootout. Those 3 killed in the gunfight are Israeli guards. Israeli police has tightened security at the Allenby Bridge crossing. Car drivers are being frisked and redirected away from the crime scene. The attack comes amid surging violence in the West Bank, with major Israeli military raids and attacks by Palestinians. This is the first attack of its kind along the border with Jordan since the 7th of October. Prime Minister Netanyahu has condemned the attack during his cabinet meet. He has denounced the assailant as a despicable terrorist inspired by a murderous ideology fueled by Iran.
We are surrounded by a murderous ideology led by Iran's axis of evil. In recent days, loathsome terrorists have murdered 6 of our hostages in cold blood and 3 Israeli police officers. The killers do not distinguish between us. They want to murder us all until the last one. Right and left, secular and religious, Jews and non-Jews. What prevents the elimination of our people, as in the past, is the strength of the State of Israel and the strength of the Israel Defense Forces.
Now, there has been no response from Jordan, that made peace with Israel in 1994, but is fiercely critical of its policies towards the Palestinians. Remember, the Allenby crossing is mainly used by Israelis, Palestinians and international tourists. Along with this, the CIA Director, William Burns, has said recently that a more detailed Gaza ceasefire proposal is due in the coming days. Now, of course, to discuss this further, we are joined by Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at Clinton Institute, University College, Dublin. Professor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, making time and speaking with us. Sir, we're in the 12th month of the war with no deal achieved. And of course, we all know that there have been multiple rounds of diplomacy, but there has been no result yet. Can the CIA achieve something with this new proposal in a few days now?
This is not just a proposal from the U.S. government. This is also from Egypt and Qatar, who are the other mediators. But if I had $1 for every time in these past 11 months that someone said a ceasefire deal was needed or was near, I'd be a very rich man. There is a specific problem to start with the current proposal for the 3-phase ceasefire, with the first phase a 6-week exchange of hostages for detainees. And that is Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister last week, only hours after his negotiators, including the head of Mossad, had said, okay, we're starting to move forward on a ceasefire deal. We're starting to move forward on an arrangement where Israeli forces would withdraw from a key corridor on the Egypt-Gaza border. Netanyahu said, no. Israeli forces will not withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor in the first phase of a ceasefire deal. They won't withdraw in the second phase of a deal. In other words, Netanyahu was pointing to an ongoing Israeli occupation of Gaza, and of course that is unacceptable to Hamas. Now, Hamas has made its own demands. Reportedly this week, it has called for the release of detainees in Israel in return for the release of civilian hostages. But the main barrier to a ceasefire continues to be Benjamin Netanyahu. And the big question is not, can the U.S. make Netanyahu accept a deal? Can pressure within Israel make Netanyahu accept a deal?
Professor Lucas, you mentioned that Netanyahu seems to be the main block at this point to arriving at a ceasefire deal? Which are the other points that you feel need to be ironed out to arrive at any kind of a truce? We're in the 12th month, and I can't repeat that enough. And as you mentioned, if you had a dime or if you had a dollar each time these diplomacies failed, of course, we know what that amounts to. At this point, which are some of the initial points that need to be ironed out at the earliest to arrive at any conclusion?
Well, I think if you were to talk about some of the specifics of a deal, you can see how it works. So when you're talking about hundreds of Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, some under what is called administrative detention, you can see them being released in exchange for the 100 hostages, dead or alive, that are held by Hamas. But it's the wider issues that are difficult here. And I think there are two in particular. The first is, will any Israeli troops be allowed to stay in Gaza after a ceasefire? Now, for Hamas, they'll say absolutely no. There's absolutely no possibility that, as in the West Bank, you would accept an occupying force in Gaza, especially with more than 40,000 Gazans having been killed. Netanyahu and the Israeli military may be insisting that there has to be some type of Israeli military presence, even if it's closer to the Israeli border rather than the Egyptian border. But the second issue, which I think is the big issue, is who runs Gaza? Remember that when this Israeli mass killing started in response to Hamas's mass killing last October, not just Netanyahu's demand, but the demand of the Israeli leadership was Hamas cannot remain in place. Well, it's quite clear that Hamas is still in place, and they still are governing Gaza. The people have not abandoned them. So can Israel accept a deal in which Hamas has some place in the Gazan government, or will they insist that Hamas must effectively be removed from Gaza?
Professor Lucas, and as you mentioned very importantly, who governs Gaza is, of course, that's a question, and that is being raised since the first month of the war. At this point, if I were to just shift focus to the US, how important do you feel is it for the current dispensation in America to secure a ceasefire before the November elections?
Certainly, if there was a ceasefire to be achieved, I think before you talk about the election, I think for President Biden, it would be a big victory as he is due to leave office next January. I think that a Gaza ceasefire could be claimed by the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who is running for president, and it would relieve some pressure on the Democrats, certainly. But I don't think that the Democrats and Harris are counting on this ceasefire to take place for November. I think, in other words, they're treading water. They simply will hope that Gaza, and I know this is going to sound strange, doesn't get even worse. I don't actually think Gaza will be a defining issue in the elections. I think there are so many important domestic issues, and I think the issue of the threat to the U.S. system from Donald Trump is so central that I think Gaza, even though it should concern all of us, will not be the primary concern of U.S. voters in early November.
I hear your point, sir. That was Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics, Clinton Institute, University College Dublin, joining us right here on Beyond World is One. Always a pleasure speaking with you, Professor.
Thank you.